On this episode of Star Trek Universe, we are talking some really interesting news bits that came out of the Paramount Plus Television Critics Association presentation, as well as our thoughts on Prodigy 109 and 110 and Moral Star Parts 1 and 2, right after these words from our mystery sponsors.
Welcome to Star Trek Universe, the podcast where you get to listen in on the continuing Star Trek conversation the two lifelong friends have been having since they were 6 years old. My name's Matthew Carroll.
I am David C. Robertson.
How you doing, Dave?
I'm all right. So I guess that means it's been 32 years since we've been started talking Star Trek.
Somewhere around there.
Oh, God. I'm feeling every minute of it.
Me too, man. Me too. I had a couple long drives this weekend, and I don't normally come here once a month to Dallas, and they're normally a little more spread apart. But this time they happen to be through scheduling, whatever. They just ended up being right next to each other. So I came over here the last weekend of January and the first weekend of February, or first week of February. So, but I had to go back to play some gigs in Birmingham. So I went home for like 4 days and turned right around and came back. And the 10-hour drive that close together, my knees are killing me, and I'm still sore just from the drive, not to mention all the gigs.
Friendship is very, very underrated in comparison to romantic relationships, at a certain point. I'm just kidding. Stop
trying to disrupt my love.
I'm just looking out for you, baby.
Well, so you tell me there's news. Yeah. I haven't heard any of it yet. Tell me all about it. I'm very, very excited. Whenever you're excited about the news, I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about it. Deadline has reported basically that Starfleet Academy is coming. And it was talked about at the TCA, the Television Critics Association presentation. And they said they're still in development on Section 31.
Cool.
So that's still happening. Which, a lot of people have been saying like, oh, maybe it's not. It's been years. No, everybody's busy. It's happening.
Right. With COVID, you just never know. Like certain shows were killed because of COVID and certain shows just got delayed a really long time.
Well, Michelle Yeoh she's also busy. Like she was in that Gunpowder Milkshake or whatever it was called. Over on Netflix. Is that what it was called?
I have no idea.
It's like Karen Gillan and Michelle Yeoh and Carla Gugino.
Wow.
It's like a bunch of like badass assassin ladies.
I remember that trailer. At
the Strange New Worlds panel, Kurtzman confirmed that they're going to keep growing and adding new series to the lineup. He says, we have to think several years out. We're thinking about knowing we'll want new shows on the air 2 or 3 years from now. So we have to start planning those now. There's a bunch of things in development now that are starting to take shape, and we're super excited about it. And he says there is another one besides 31, Section 31, that he is remaining tight-lipped about.
Okay.
And then Clemens, another bigwig said, I think we have some fantastic offerings in our slate. And I think you may see a few more very curated editions coming along. Now, at a different thing, talking to SFX, Star Trek Picard co-creator Akiva Goldsman said that he has an anthology series that he's been trying to get off the ground.
Oh, that'd be cool. I feel like they've mentioned that before.
He says there's something that I like, which I think Robert Kirkman is doing right now with The Walking Dead, which is, I'll call it Tales of the Federation, where you could just do one-offs. So you could bring George Takei back for an hour and do a show about Sulu as an older man, or find Jonathan Archer having now retired from his Enterprise and being on Earth, and just do these certain really interesting ones. Like things that wouldn't work for like an entire series.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. The thing about that would make I feel like that difficult from a production standpoint is you amateurize the cost of things like building sets and building like CGI models and things over the course of a series, and often they could even get better over the course of a series because they've like they've learned things or whatever. You've seen this. when you do one-offs like that set in a sci-fi world, it's often very expensive because you got to decide if somebody has to come in and, let's say they do an Archer episode. Somebody has to come in and design what Archer's, his world looks like, which makes those kinds of shows would be very costly to produce. I think the idea is freaking awesome, though.
I love the idea. I think, it depends on how you do it. Like, I love that his two ideas were George Takei about Sulu as an old guy, or Jonathan Archer as an old guy.
Or how about Cisco as an old guy? I got 1,000 of them.
Kira Nerys as an old lady.
Nah, this guy'd say broad. Come on.
I have no idea.
I don't know why. Just saying old guy over and over felt like as an old broad. Like it just seems like old man trying to connect with the stories. Mm-hmm. No, I feel like we're getting a lot of that these days with like. I finally did watch that movie Nobody you recommended to me.
Oh gosh,
very vehemently.
Yeah.
Great movie, but that with like the Liam Neeson arc and all that stuff that's gone on, like I feel like we're getting a lot of that. Like I'm an old man, but I still kick ass.
Yeah,
in the world these days.
It's sort of like, I guess, like John Wick did it too, where it's like I'm retired, but now I got to come back because they did a thing.
Right, and it's not like a new thing, but I do feel like there's a certain amount of it's not a new thing at all, but I do think it has trended downward where like stars of movies got kind of younger and hotter for a while, like in the 90s, and then it's sort of just like now I think because of the advent of the internet and we don't really have as big of celebrities anymore, like media is so bifurcated and trifurcated and quadrificated, that like we get these the people who were famous before the internet are still our most famous people. You know what I mean? And so now we get this weird arc where like they were just going back to like older and older people, which I actually like. I think a lot of times it adds a lot of gravitas and experience to the roles and stuff, Yeah.
See, I would have said that the current money makers, the people, from the people with the most
cachet.
Yeah, like the most disposable income, I would say, are the people who are somewhere between 40 and 45, and there's a heavy bit of nostalgia going on right now. So like that's why we're seeing stuff from our childhood come back.
See, that money level of people having that money has always been the case, but it was always the like 13 to 25 demographic that seemed to be making the blockbusters for. But I think because our generation is in an arrested state of development where we like still love the stuff we love as children, like unashamedly, partially because I don't know, we're sort of throwing off the ideals of the previous generations.
Yeah, we're not making podcasts for Water for Elephants.
Hey man, we got a whole series coming out soon. Just a scene by scene breakdown of that movie.
Not a lot of minute by minute coverage of Atonement.
That is such a funny parody idea for a parody cast. Like the Atonement Minute. Like you see the Star Wars Minute and the MCU Minute and all this. You get like Atonement Minute, and we just for like 2 years break down that movie.
So we're on minute 3, and here you see Keira Knightley's sister is mad because the guy that she has a crush on was kissing her sister. Well, that was it for this episode.
Yeah, our analysis is like super thin. Like there's no analysis whatsoever. We just describe what happens in that minute. That actually sounds like a really funny parody podcast, and make each episode like a minute long.
Anyway.
I was just saying that we have this arrested state of development partially because we were throwing off the ideals that we were sort of like our parents' generation were sort of forced into like, oh, you got to grow up and do the job and do the 40 hours a week. And we're like, nah, fuck that. We'll do what we want to do. But also our media our media very much grew up with us, and now we still love the media we love. It's still applicable to children, so it like sort of crosses the boundaries. It hits all the quadrants, like superhero media in general hits all the quadrants.
Sure,
it's just IP that can like really cross the lines. But anyway, so yeah, sorry, way diverting from the point. What else is happening?
All right, so they're already filming Picard season 3. And
sweet,
they're like releasing like these pictures of like the captain's chair and like Lacar's panels and stuff. And I'm honestly getting more excited for season 3 of Picard than I am for season 2, which hasn't even come out yet. And so according to the showrunners, Terry Matalas and Akiva Goldsman, they were talking to the SFX magazine, and they were asked about about the weight of canon bearing down on Picard's second season, and Matalas says not so much in season 2, definitely in season 3. There are some game-changing Star Trek universe ideas. Season 2, as epic in scope as it is an intimate story. And then talking about season 3, he says there are a few nods to the Kirk movies. I grew up with the original series and the Kirk movies. That's my Star Trek. So you'll see a few of those things kind of tie some Star Trek together. And I think Akiva has constructed a really fascinating and heartbreaking psychological exploration of Picard that no one is expecting. Well, we are now.
Way to raise their expectations, buddy.
Yeah.
Interesting. That sounds great. And honestly, the idea of an intimate story for season 2 also sounds great. Like, I watching the trailers thus far, I haven't gotten that feeling that it's going to be an intimate story. So that gives me a little hope, a little extra hope for season 2. So yeah, good quote. Good PR.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of the high fidelity Rob Gordon rules to making a playlist or a mixtape or whatever it was. Like he's like, you start out big, then you pull it back a little bit. You don't want to blow your load. Then you really go for it.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. So those are the newses. I'm excited about more Star Trek. They're just keep bringing me Star Trek, and I'll keep spooning it into my gaping maw.
Well, yeah, and you say the other quote you said about how they're looking 2 or 3 years ahead to put out new Star Trek. Like, you got to think, like, they originally said Picard is 3 seasons.
Yeah, and they haven't renewed it. They renewed everything else.
Right. So, but they're already working on the 3rd season. That means probably this time next year-ish, we'll be getting season 3. Probably around a year after season 2.
Maybe.
And so, like, yeah, it's just kind of, and then Discovery is in its 5th season now. Right?
It is in its 4th season, but it has been renewed for season 5.
Okay, so like most Star Trek series, the most we've ever seen them go is 7 seasons. So a couple of years from now, we're looking at 2 of the big tent poles of what's going on right now in Star Trek disappearing, and we just have these 2 animated shows.
Yeah, and one of the things that I'm really hoping Star Trek does this, and it looks like they are starting to conform more to this concept, because Strange New Worlds, the first season, or both seasons, are only going to be 10 episodes. I like that. As opposed to Discovery being, it was, 15, 16, and now is 13. Like, I like the British format of creating shows a lot more.
I do too. I think if you're making more than 10 episodes in a year, the show suffers.
You're making a lot of filler.
You're either making filler or you're, just lowering the quality of what you're making. Like, you just can't focus like you need to be able to make really good television.
I agree. Good Lord, there are plenty of Star Trek episodes throughout all the old series that I would just lop.
So speaking of, I was looking in last night into watching the Clone Wars, because I've seen a lot of Star Wars, and everybody tells me if I watch the Clone Wars, I'll get all this cool backstory, and it like bridges a lot of the character work that they don't have time to do in the movies, and for Anakin and Ahsoka or whatever. I barely know who Ahsoka is,
because you haven't seen Clone Wars.
Exactly. I saw her show up in The Mandalorian and
Rosario Dawson though, so that's enough. Yeah. That's enough.
Again, that's enough that I can watch the Clone Wars and imagine it's Rosario Dawson. That'll pull me through. But no, I went and looked at a list of. I just can't make it because there's so many. There's a lot of bad episodes, and I've been told that. And so I went and looked up like essential Clone Wars episodes. Like what do I need to watch? And it was a list of episodes, and it was just like season 1. You need to watch these 3 episodes of the 20. You need to watch these 3. I was like, oh, okay. I think I can do this. I think I can do this in like a weekend. Yeah. I think it gets more. The later seasons, they start to be like, watch these 10. But like, there's a lot of like weird. Like, here's an episode where we just focus on the drones for a while. Droids. I just called them drones.
Yeah, I knew what you meant. That Dave Filoni, the guy that did the Clone Wars, he's working on Book of Boba Fett, and he's writing it. He and Jon Favreau.
From what I understand, and I'm definitely not the guy to ask, but from what I understand from the Star Wars Universe podcast guys, Filoni is like the kind of like he's becoming sort of the Kevin Feige over there of the Star Wars, which is what they needed from the beginning before they made their sequel series, I think. Yeah. The sequel trilogy. But yeah, what he's doing over there is cool. This is neither here nor there. This is definitely not the podcast for it, but I definitely have enjoyed, I got to where I was finally enjoying Mandalorian, and then they started the Boba Fett series, and I'm having a hard time getting into it, but then they jumped over to characters from the Mandalorian, and I'm like, I'm in now. I'm back in. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen so many people complaining about that too, and it's funny because like they were like, oh yeah, we were referring to Book of Boba Fett behind the scenes as Mandalorian 2.5. Because they were like, no, this is just a chapter in the Mandalorian story. What are you talking about?
That's funny. Yeah, I definitely think like it's cheating at this point. They've gone spoiler alert for Boba Fett, but they've gone 2 full episodes without showing Boba Fett, and they just followed the Mandalorian for 2 full episodes.
It wasn't full episodes. Like he was there. He didn't speak in the second episode, but he was kind of hanging out around, in that little area where they're talking. Like he was just standing there next to Ming-Na Wen.
Oh, that's right. The very end of the episode. That's right. Yeah. The very end of the episode, they connect it back, but it's still 2 episodes of following the Mandalorian to reconnect. I thought that when they did 1 episode, I was like, okay, they're doing this 1 episode. Like that's kind of cool. Yeah. And then I was like, oh gosh, what show is this? Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah. I loved the appearance of Cad Bane there. I don't really know him. I know that it was the same actor from Clone Wars.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, but that's the gunslinger who appears out in the desert.
Yeah, I had seen his picture over the years in Clone Wars stuff, and then when I was looking through the Clone Wars episodes to watch last night, There were a couple of the thumbnails had his face on them.
But I was like, okay. I do not watch Book of Boba Fett, but I do wander in from time to time while Bethany's watching it. Mm-hmm. And like I came in, I think I had like a bowl of cereal or something, and they're out in the desert, and dude, Timothy Oliphant sees the guy in the desert, Cad Bane, approaching, and I didn't know his name. I couldn't remember it, but I was like, oh, I bet that's that badass action figure that I've seen so many times over the years. Because he's a gunslinging alien, and I've wanted to buy that figure, but I'm like, I can't justify it because I don't follow Star Wars. I don't know who the hell he is, but he's a freaking, a gunslinger with a long coat. But he's an alien. Like that's a badass image to me. So.
No, it really is. And they did a great job on Boba Fett, making him look really badass. Yeah. When he like pulls the brim of his hat up, just that spaghetti western style of shooting. And I know you're a big fan of that, so.
I don't really care about the shooting. I love like the silhouettes. I love a lot of the cinematography. Like I can't do a John Wayne movie.
That's what I meant by shooting. Yeah. Right?
Oh, you mean shooting?
I mean, I mean shooting the movie, not shooting the guns. Right. Sorry for the confusion.
Fair enough. Yeah. The Sergio Leone style of cinematography, I like a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, anyway, for sure, man.
You want to talk about
let's
Prodigy?
Get to Star Trek.
For God's sake.
Yeah, let's talk about Prodigy. Is this the season finale or is this just another break?
This is the true mid-season finale. It's like halfway through the 20 episode season.
God, yeah, I did not realize they were doing 20 episodes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which a lot of times animated series do that, like especially if they're for like Nickelodeon or something, like they will commission, well, back in the old days, they would commission like 65 episodes for the first season. And then a lot of times that's all they would get. But,
right. And it would sometimes run over a longer period a little bit too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So,
but the thing that shocks me about that is not so much that they're doing more of it. It's that the quality has been this good. And it just made me think this was going to be a shorter season. The fact that it's stayed high quality for 10 episodes and then we got 10 more coming. I'm impressed.
Yeah, I haven't had any like great qualms with it. It's been solid, and God help me, it's my favorite Star Trek show of the new era at this point.
I've heard you say that, and I'm so happy that you feel that way. That's cool. I don't know that it's that for me, but it definitely is like one of the strongest first seasons of a Star Trek series I've ever seen. And it's really, really well done. It knows what it is right off the bat, and it really does a good job delivering what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. So
what it is doesn't necessarily resonate with me as much as like some of the other series did, but I think it's really, really high quality for what it is.
For what it is.
Yeah.
Fantastic Star Trek?
It's good. It's really good, but it's still like, you say what you will. I know you get bristle at this, but it is a show that is directed at kids. I think it's great. I love it as an adult, but it is directed at kids. And I know this because when I watch CBS All Access, they always show me commercials for murder shows. And then when I watch this one, it's all Blue's Clues.
Yeah. I know.
Like it's the target demographic. Yep, Rugrats and Blue's Clues, and it's a target demographic. And I think there's always going to be a little bit of the stories they're telling about those kids are stories that I don't resonate as with as much. They're not delving as deep into some of the. Sometimes. Now, some of these things are really good. And I think this episode particularly had some really adult themes that almost get glossed over. But as an adult, I look at it and go, wow, that was when, I guess we're getting into the plot here.
Yeah, sure.
So, spoiler alert. But when Zero comes at the diviner and says, you used me to hurt so many people. I'm not going to let you do. Now I'm going to hurt you so you can't hurt anyone else. There's just this like anger and pain in his voice, and I should have remembered this. But had they mentioned his ability to like make people go mad?
Yeah,
in previous episodes.
That's why they're in the containment suit. And also that's from the original series, the Medusans. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and the name is the Medusans, so I was like, well, that makes sense. But I guess I hadn't I hadn't recalled that from the original series, and I hadn't noticed them talking about it in this season. So I'm actually really surprised they didn't make a bigger deal. They do mention it in part 1 of this episode. They mention it. He says Jankum makes a joke about him. And he says, haha, making a joke at the expense of my own self-consciousness at the fact that no one can see me without, going mad or whatever. But I almost didn't notice that line in episode 1, and then episode 2, I was like, wait, oh, I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah, they've mentioned it a few times throughout the season, enough that I was like, this is going to come into play somewhere.
Interesting. I legit didn't even notice those mentions, so I was very surprised. But the character moment though is what got me. Like him as Zero stepping forward and being like, "I'm going to hurt you, so you don't hurt anyone else." It was really dark, and there's a lot of anger there. It was really well done.
Yep, I thought they did a really good job with playing with Gwen and her dad. Because, like, you remember when she attacks him with her weapon that he gave her?
Mm-hmm.
And he says, but you forget that I gave it to you, and he controls it to hurt her. And that is, like, such a great, it's kind of on the nose, but it's so great because parents do that shit. Like, toxic parents will give you things, and then, like, when you disagree with them, they will use everything they ever did for you as a weapon against you instead of recognizing their own flaws. And I thought that was perfect and really resonated with me.
Yeah, I see that. I like that allegorical take on it. It's also just a sign of how little he trusted her, and he's trying to convince her to be on his side, but he's like proving in that moment that he's never really trusted her, never really cared for her. He gave her a thing that, you hand someone a knife, you're trusting them, you hand someone a gun, you're trusting them. And he handed her this weapon, but it turns out he had control of it the whole time. It's really, sort of a dark thing. Again, a lot of darkness in this episode. And the diviner being willing to kill all of the unwanted, and he's like, I promised them a ship, I didn't promise them their lives. Like, he's just ready to go, man. It's and so much fun when they as soon as they go out of frame or whatever, he's like, all right, they're gone, we can stop pretending, and then them just getting to work as like Starfleet officers, which them in the Starfleet uniforms, bravo, I loved it.
I dug it hard.
Me too.
I feel foolish because I genuinely expected all of the unwanted to become the Prodigy crew.
Me too. I thought that was going to be going on. But I liked what they did. Yeah. I liked what they did with the unwanted in general. I loved the moment between the two unwanted that could talk for the first time. Mm-hmm. It was so cute. Man.
All of these feelings I've had for so long.
All these thoughts and feelings I can finally share. And then Dal is like, all right, guys. He just like pushes them off into anti-gravity. He's like, gotta get moving. There'll be time for hugs later.
Yeah. I expected, in the first part, that they weren't actually planning to give over the protostar completely. Like, that did not feel like a big like reveal for me. They kind of played it like it was supposed to be, but so I expected that one fully, but I didn't expect to see Vice Admiral Janeway at the end of part 2.
Oh, definitely not. Very exciting.
Definitely not aboard the Dauntless.
Right.
The Dauntless was a fake ship, right? Yeah, from Voyager. Mm-hmm. But I guess like Vice Admiral Janeway was just like, you know what? I really dug the way this one looked.
Let's make that ship a reality.
Kind of, because it doesn't look like it from the outside, but
right. But maybe I'm wondering if it has the technology that one purported to have, which was the faster drive, the
slipstream. Yeah, they reverse engineered that in Voyager to get home faster a little bit. So they, right. I don't see why not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's very exciting. And yeah, the Dauntless call out was weird but cool.
Yeah.
I was really happy to see Rock like, really kind of finish the arc she's been on since the very beginning, not wanting to be judged by her looks, and like
he's a better engineer than Jankum Pog at this point.
No, I think Jankum's going to be security now. Like in this episode, he was the fighter, and she became the because he's percussive maintenance. Like he's the brawler,
and he's got that sweet weapon hand.
Yeah, he does. That hand came in handy a couple of times this episode.
Yeah, man, I liked it, and it was heartbreaking at the end when friggin' Gwen got part of her memory erased, and of course, it's just the part that she needs to save the Federation.
Yeah, so I didn't really get, though, they say, we can never return, she keeps whispering. But it doesn't really make sense, because he was going to go back and use a weapon. Like, can they not go back and not use the weapon?
I don't think so, because he programmed they don't know this. He programmed the Protostar to hack any other Starfleet ship that it comes into contact with, and it will take over that ship and fight all the other Starfleet ships. So, like, if they go back to the Federation, every Starfleet ship that comes within a certain, distance of them will get hacked, and they'll all just start fighting. It'll destroy the Federation, basically. It'll destroy the Starfleet portion of the Federation.
Yeah, I heard him say all that. I guess it's just a latent program that'll just happen, and he doesn't have to activate it.
Yeah.
I guess that makes sense. And we'll see. I'm sure we'll find out more next time on, because they definitely are going to come back to that.
Yeah, I mean, he's like the lone inhabitant of the mines now, which is kind of
also very dark.
Yeah, like I don't know what he was writing in the dirt, what he was like. That pattern he was making in the dirt, but looked interesting.
Also, it gave me Khan vibes.
Yeah.
You
never leave one of these guys.
Yeah, let's leave this villain on a planet by himself. He's mad. Like, also, that's like, on multiple levels, that's very un-Starfleet. Like, to leave him there as a risk to everyone, but also if he's just mad and he's like not able to take care of himself, it's really a dark thing to just leave him there by himself.
Yeah,
that was a real weird decision on both the crew's part and the show's part, and the fact that Janeway says it so like kind of peppy. He will now be the only inhabitant of this. He is now the only unwanted. It's like, ooh, that doesn't make me feel good.
Yeah,
I know he's the bad guy and all.
Yeah. I dig it. I think there will be consequences for that.
I hope you're right. I hope it will be couched that way as consequences for leaving him, because I don't think that's a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
That was a bad call on their part. They should have taken him to the Federation as a prisoner, or it's like she said. You don't need to attack the Federation. You need to talk to them. So, like, they could have taken him back as like a witness of what happened when they did this first contact.
Mm-hmm.
I was really surprised by that, the Vanukat, and how they've been destroyed by by contact with the Federation, because that's kind of a thing that's kind of an arc that all of Star Trek has been on. This sort of like questioning the Federation and its ideals and how it runs things, and whether or not they are actually doing good in the universe,
Yeah, but the way he talked about it, it seemed like here's the Federation, and like his people were like, we're superior, half of them, and then the other half are like, no, we should hang out with these guys. And then, like, it just became a civil war. So, like, the Federation's ideals didn't necessarily, like, nothing that the Federation did other than existing.
Right. No, I
tore
agree.
this planet apart, which I think
agree
is
with that.
A great allegory for where we're at as a society today. Just,
yeah.
Should we embrace the future, or, be like, no, we're going to be supremacist and xenophobic?
Right. Well, yeah, I just thought that was it was interesting when you look at it in the light of, Picard and the time period where this was placed. Like,
mm-hmm.
It seems like it's pretty close to the Picard season 1, like the sort of darker times for the Federation begin, and it makes me wonder, like, what happened in that first contact, and like, were they already being kind of protectionist?
Mm-hmm.
Was it before or after the Mars incident?
Yeah. I don't know.
It just raises all those questions.
But they did hit some heavy All Good Things future vibes. Like, they had those kinds of uniforms. They had the same communicators from All Good Things.
Cool. I didn't realize that.
I saw someone point out, like, on one of the Dauntless consoles, it had up to warp 10, and then there was, like, space above it. So they're getting closer to that warp 13 they talked about in All Good Things. And we know that Vice Admiral Janeway, we're going to actually spend time with some people on that ship, because Jason Alexander is playing one of them. And
fun.
I can't remember her name. This girl from The Good Place is playing that Trill lieutenant that we saw.
What's her name? Kristen? No, I don't know. The main girl from Good Place?
Yes, I believe she's Indian.
Oh, gotcha. I know who you're talking about now.
Can't remember her name.
I know who you're talking about now. I did not, Jamil.
That's it.
Jamil.
Yeah. So, we know we're going to start getting into some of those characters, and I'm excited for all of that, man. That sounds really cool.
For sure. I mean, having an actual returning character, we got excited when it happened on Lower Decks as a joke, It was exciting to see Tom Paris and just like the random like plate jokes. But like this is like way cooler to have a show that's like really exploring it as an adventure story.
Yeah.
And not just sort of like as a joke.
Yeah, man. And look,
so fun.
I was really happy with the Dal storyline. I was happy that, he was like, this is our Kobayashi Maru, and he winds up like firing on the protostars so they can so he can like transport over. He's actually kind of becoming a captain. I dig it. Like he's making better decisions, and he's growing as a character. He is not the same. He even says it can't be one of my half-baked plans. He's becoming more self-aware, and I am digging the growth of the characters for sure.
And they came up with a plan that required all of their sort of expertise and knowledge, and like hiding Murph inside of the Zero suit, and like all the little sort of surprises that we got. Yeah. I think that required the entire team's collaborative efforts, and that's she said you don't have to do it alone. Like we're all here, and that's such a big lesson for him. They learned it a little bit last episode, but this eepisode, it just kind of put on display. I dig it.
Yeah,
I dig it a lot.
Yeah, and I'm interested because they keep bringing up the fact that Zero can't really do much with their claws or whatever with their little. I'm like, what are they going to give them? Like, I'm waiting on the next version of this suit. Because they brought it up like 3 or 4 times now, and I'm like,
that's a good point. That's a good point. We've had this it's very like junk suit, It would be really neat if he like gets. We still have a similar character design, but it's like a really cool like mech suit or whatever.
Yeah,
that could be really fun.
So I think the show is pretty smart, and I think it's they're doing a lot of allegory and symbolism with the characters, and I'm just down for it. I think it's really good. I hate putting that little qualifier on for a kid's show. It's pretty good. No, it's actually it's better than a lot of adult shows I watch.
Well, I totally agree. And that's why I didn't say a kid's show. I said for what it is, and it is a show that is trying to be targeted at kids while still being good enough for adults, and like still telling stories that can work for both. Yeah, that inherently means that it's not targeting me. You know what I mean? Like, and that's what I mean. Like, I like this show a lot for what it is, a show that is not targeted at me. And I really think it's a great version of that. And I like, I'm excited to share this. I told you I've watched a little bit with my niece. She really likes it. I told her that like, hey, the first arc of that show is finished. You can catch up. And so next time I go back to Pratt, we're going to sit and watch some episodes. She really likes it a lot.
They're I know by virtue of it being on Nickelodeon and them like pimping out kids commercials, is supposed to be for kids, and the marketing department believes it's for kids. But I don't think they're writing it for kids, because they have had some dark shit in this show.
Oh, I agree. They're not pulling punches, which I really like.
Yeah.
And that's this thing, like good kids television often doesn't. A lot of the stuff we grew up on and we loved, like, has some dark things in there. And like, that is something I think is lacking these days, is kids can use a little darkness here and there. Yeah. They can handle it.
I know I could when I was a kid. That was what I thrived on.
Yeah, but look how you turned out.
That's true. But I am a paying customer. And that's all they care about.
Truth. Dropping truth bombs. So, I guess that's about it. Any other characters we should touch on, or?
I'm slightly obsessed with Goth Janeway, but
I love that. I loved Goth Janeway, and I know it like turned out that it was a trick and everything, but like, man, it's so funny that like the diviner steps on the ship and he's like, hack that hologram, and then she just had like an evil mode switch that like turned her into like a total dark colors. Yeah, I liked it a lot. You know, that's going to be like a good action figure at some point,
or a cosplay.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I did want to point out a Moral Star, the name of the episode, is an anagram for Tars Lamora.
What is Tars Lamora?
The place where the unwanted are.
Oh, that's nice.
I'm pretty over the moon for this show.
Me too, man. I love it.
I loved when Hologram Janeway told them, "You never thought you were Starfleet material, but today you're risking everything on a seemingly impossible mission to save others, to bring hope to a hopeless cause. Nothing is more Starfleet than that." Like,
yeah,
I almost clapped.
I loved it, but the use of the hopeless cause made me think of the oh gosh, what are they called?
Oh, the Romulan truth people.
Yeah, the Romulan truth people that I'm spacing on their names.
The Romulan truth assassins.
Yeah,
Kawat Malat. Was that right?
That's it. Kawat Malat. Yeah. Romulan truth assassins. Yep. That made me think of that immediately. So good. So good. I dug it a lot, man. So, well, let's, I guess next week's Discovery, is that right?
February 10th. So that is, in a couple days.
Great. Well, we'll be back real soon then.
Yeah.
Sweet. Peace.
Joel on True. Live long and prosper. Something about cake. What was the cake thing?
Cake is a lie, man.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to the Star Trek Universe Podcast, a Stranded Panda production. If you'd like to hear more from David C. Robertson, check out the DC On Screen podcast or maladjusted.tv for his web videos. If you'd like to hear more from Matthew Carroll, check out the Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast or listen to his music. Just search for Matthew Carroll anywhere you get music.